Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm back with a really fun, messy mixed media project for you guys. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but I was waiting on a few products to get to me that I had to order for this. But recently on my channel, I shared with you some new products from Open.Journey, and she has a bunch of these new word focus cards. She's got them in these smaller formats. She's got the Armor of God set, and then there is a larger set of just generic biblical words focus cards. And so the idea behind these are to give you a space to do some word studies. And I really, really love this. This is something that I've done over the years. And it just kind of helps you better understand verses when you dive in and study the words that are being used and have a good understanding of what those words are. Helps you to understand the verse in its entirety. And so what Ingrid has done is she's put together these cards. These are the larger ones. And so they've got this particular set, like I said, is Armor of God. So it's got words around that theme of Armor of God from the passage in Ephesians. And she's got the Greek or Hebrew translation of that word, and then a list of verses where that word shows up. And so the idea is that you can either use this space to do an in-depth word study. Maybe you want to write out the definition, write out some of those verses, something like that. Or just give you some space to create or prayer journal or do whatever you want with these cards. They're a blank canvas with a little bit of a prompt to kind of get you inspired. And so what I plan on doing is doing some art on the front of these and then doing the in-depth word study. So actually using my Strong's Concordance to break down that word, look into some of those verses, and just, do a full in-depth study on the back of the cards. But I wanted a way to keep them organized and keep them displayed out where I can see them. And so I decided to create these little ring-bound mini albums. And so with it being ring-bound, it allows me to take the card out and get messy and create on it if I want to. But then I can also stand this up and let a card be displayed out in my office or in my home or something like that. So I'm going to show you how I hole punch these and put it all together, but I wanted to create these covers. Now, the inspiration for these covers is not my own. It was 100% inspired by Paula Cheney. She creates for Tim Holtz, and she had done a project when they released the new crackling campfire distress color. And so she did this really fun framed mixed media piece for that launch. And so my mixed media cards I'm going to do here are 100% inspired by that. I'm not going to copy it exactly, but as far as the products that I'm using and the colors and some of the, the texture paste and things like that is definitely inspired by her project. So I will link that down below so you can go and check out her project. It's gorgeous. I don't have all the products that she used, so I'm going to kind of improvise and we're going to have some fun. But we're going to play with some texture fade embossing folders. I've got some fun dyes, lots and lots of inks and paints and sprays. We're going to make our own sprays, play with some, crackling texture paste, all kinds of fun things. I also wanted to show you how to color things. I know we're going to be talking about a lot of different products in this video. So this is one that you might want to save and refer back to because I'm going to use a lot of products in here that I don't typically use or use very often on my channel. And one of those being alcohol inks. So these are fairly new to me. I haven't really got to play with them on camera just because alcohol inks are not something you can really use in your Bible because these are going to bleed through Bible paper. But I wanted to get them for coloring different mediums like metals and acetates and things like that. There's a lot of really fun creative things you can do with these. And so I had them just sitting off to the side and actually hadn't planned on using them for this project. But when I was pulling everything together for the project, I had used these antique rings for this one. And I had one left in the larger size, but I didn't have any more of the smaller size. I'm like, well, great, what am I going to do? And so I had a ton of these silver ones, but that wasn't really the aesthetic that I wanted. I wanted it to look antiqued and aged. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I could add alcohol ink to these and recolor them. And so that's actually what I did. So this ring here started out as a silver ring like this. And then I added some espresso alcohol ink, so a brown alcohol ink, and kind of dabbed it around, and the alcohol ink grabs a hold. And this works on, slippery surfaces. It's best on things like plastic and metals and acetates and things like that. And so it totally transformed and recolored the metal. I'm going to do the same thing for one of these little charm pieces. This is from the Ideology collection by Tim Holtz, and I added one of those to this album as well. This one I colored with some sienna, so like a deep, deep red color, and you can see how that changed the color of the metal. So I wanted to play with some things that you might not see me use very often in my Bible journaling, but are products that I love and love to play with and are kind of exploring and trying out, and they work for projects like this outside of your Bible. And so I wanted to kind of show you how to use some of those, but also give you some ideas for, it's probably cheaper to buy these plain silver items and then to be able to recolor them whatever color that you want. So I thought that might be kind of fun. I've also pulled out a selection of die cuts and pieces that I have from Open.Journey from her various devotional kits, and we're going to be using those to embellish the front of our card. So let me go ahead and put you on fast forward, and we will get this project put together. Everything will be linked down below. Any of the products that I use, if I don't discuss it, will be linked down below for you guys. So let's go ahead and put you on fast forward, and we'll put this together.
Okay, so we're going to start with the base layers. So I have this lumber 3D embossing folder, and then these are 2 pieces of Canson watercolor paper that I have cut down to the same size as the word cards and just rounded the corners. And I did spray the front and back of this paper lightly with just regular water, just a light mist of water. And then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. I'm just using the base plate, the embossing folder with the watercolor paper, and then my embossing mat. I don't have the correct sandwich for my machine, but this works just fine. If you want more texture, you can run this through 2 or 3 times. I just did 1 just because I knew I was going to attach a bunch of stuff to the front, so I didn't want it like fully 3D embossed. So you just have to kind of work with your sandwich depending on what kind of paper you are embossing. You might need to add additional cardstock shims to your sandwich to get the right pressure when you run it through your machine. So you just need to play around with that a little bit. I went ahead and dried those because they were slightly damp from misting them with the water. The water on the cardstock or watercolor paper or whatever helps it so it doesn't crack when it goes through that embossing folder. So now I'm applying some speckled egg distress paint. Now I'm going to use these products. I will have them listed down below, but use what you have. Improvise. There were a lot of things that Paula used that I didn't have, and so I improvised with what I have. So if you don't have this particular color of paint, use something different, or use regular acrylic paint, or use something different. Play with it. I like distress paints because they are reactive with water. This particular one has a sponge dauber lid that I added to it, so I can just go direct to paper. And then I'm just brushing off excess paint with a damp baby wipe, which kind of knocks back the color a little bit. So you've got darker color in the valleys of that embossing and lighter color on the surface. So I went ahead and dried that. And then now I'm taking some Hickory Smoke Distress ink. This is the original Distress ink, not Distress Oxide, and I'm rubbing it over the surface of these cards. And you'll see that it's picking up the high points of the embossing. And when you're done, it looks like 100-year-old wood that's been painted blue that's worn away. So the paint is in the valleys of the wood and not on the high points. I did this technique with Distress Oxide inks, and it's not the same. Distress Oxides have a much softer look. Distress inks, the originals, are much more vibrant, deeper. They just have a different look. So again, you're going to have to use what you have, experiment, and kind of improvise if you don't have what I'm using here. So I went ahead and dried that, and then now we're going in with some texture paste. This is Crackle texture paste. I'm applying with my finger. This paste, the crackle effect depends on how much paste you put on. So the thicker the paste, the more of a crackle effect. I'm doing this very thin. This is going to look like moss growing on the wood. It is so cool. So I'm applying it with my finger pretty thin. Ideally, you would set this aside for about 30 minutes and let it dry. I'm not patient like that. So I'm going in with my heat tool and heating it up. You do still get the crackle effect. It's maybe not as intense as it would be if you let it air dry. I'm going to hold this up. I don't know if you'll be able to see all of the crackle texture, but you get this really fun, crackly, it almost looks like bark or moss that would be growing on the tree. This is white. It does dry white. So you can leave it as is, but we are going to color this. Now, Paula in her project, she used distress crayons. I don't have distress crayons, but I do have gelatos. So I've pulled out pistachio and chocolate. And then I'm just taking a damp paintbrush and dabbing some of this color over that crackle texture paste. I tried doing this where I did it direct to the texture paste. So I rubbed the gelato on there and then kind of buffed it out with my finger, and the color was way too intense. So you want to go in with a damp paintbrush, pick up the color, and then apply it to your card. So again, my paintbrush is wet. I'm picking up some of that chocolate gelato directly from the gelato and then just going over the areas where I put the texture paste. And you may need to slow things down, rewind it, watch it again, go check out Paula's blog post. She goes in written detail about these steps, so that might work a little bit better for you. Again, I'm using her project as my inspiration and kind of learning from how she did things. So just dabbing that over those areas, and it gives you just this really amazing wood texture. I am obsessed. I think it'd be so fun to create like journaling cards with this. If you wanted to incorporate this into your Bible journaling, there's just lots of different things that you could put these techniques on and make it your own. I think it's so, so fun. I love getting messy like this and playing with different products like this. All right, so we're going to set those cards aside and we're going to work on our leaves. So I have some nonstick craft sheets on my desk. Now, I don't have distress spray stains. That is what Paula used, but I do have distress inks. So I have the fossilized amber distress ink that I smushed out onto my mat, and then I wet my paper. This is Canson mixed media paper. So this is a lighter weight than the watercolor paper. Mixed media paper, again, everything will be linked down below. And so I smushed that. And then again, because I didn't have spray stains, I tried this with my Distress Oxide sprays and I did not get a good effect. So I made my own spray paints. So I have these mini misters. I filled them with a ratio of 1/3 Distress paint and 2/3 water. I'm using speckled egg, fossilized amber, and crackling campfire. That's the new color. And then I'm shaking those up and spraying them on the paper. Ideally, you would do this with distress stains. They are very, very intense in color. They are translucent, and so they kind of meld and blend together and layer. It's just very different than distress oxides, but this got the job done. So it's going to look like a hot mess. That's okay. I'm spraying the paper down with plain water and then spraying the color, drying, layering. You may just need to play around to find, what ratio of color and water works for you. These are all water reactive mediums. So when I add water, even to that distress paint, it just causes different textures to happen in the paint. And so this might look like a muddy, ugly mess, but don't worry. We are going to die cut from this and it ends up being beautiful fall looking leaves. So just play around with your layering. You may need to do 2 or 3 layers, build up the color. When the speckled egg and fossilized amber blend together, it gives you a green. And then the colors all together, all 3 of them, give you kind of a brown. And so all of those colors mold together or meld together to create fall colors. I'm also going to take the mini mister apart and just splatter some color on there as well when it's mostly dry. You do want to use either watercolor paper or mixed media paper, not regular cardstock, because we're using so much water and wet mediums. Regular cardstock will not hold up to this. So now that's dry, you can see that is amazing color and texture on that paper. I'm obsessed. So, so pretty. And so I'm going to pull out these skeleton leaf dies and lay these down on there and run them through my die cutting machine. I ended up not cutting out this larger one just because I knew it was going to be too big for the project that I was doing. But I did cut these out 2 times. That way I had plenty of variety to figure out which ones I wanted to use in my project. I only used 3 of these leaves on the project. So you can set aside the extras and use them in something different. Whenever I die cut, I try to die cut as much as I can out of that paper I'm cutting out of, and then save those extra die cut out pieces for other projects. And that way I don't have to die cut every single time I sit down to create. So these have little pieces that come out, so they look like skeleton leaves. My plates, my cutting plates are old, and so they didn't get a very good cut, which is fine. I liked the piecey look of some of the pieces staying in those dies and some of them being out. So I'm going to set those aside, and we're going to start working on coloring our metal pieces. So I have a glass mat down on my desk and then a folded up piece of paper towel. If you are worried about mess, you may want to wear gloves. Make sure that you have your surface protected because alcohol inks get on everything and they're very hard to remove. So you just want to be careful. I have a special set of paintbrushes that I only use with my alcohol inks. And so I'm going in with that espresso alcohol ink and dabbing it on these metal rings. If you get this on anything that you don't want, you can use just regular rubbing alcohol. So you can see I accidentally touched my desk with my paintbrush and I just instantly wiped it up with some rubbing alcohol and it takes that ink off of the surface. But just keep in mind, if you get it on your clothes, it's not coming out. If you get it on a porous surface, it's not coming out. So if you've got like a wood desk or something like that, alcohol ink, it's staying there forever. Think of it like Sharpies. You wouldn't want Sharpies on your carpet. You don't want alcohol ink on your carpet. So just be very careful. But I'm just going in and layering it up. It doesn't give you a super smooth finish, but that's okay. I want it to look antiqued. I want it to look textured. So there's some darker areas, some lighter areas. You know, it looks like burnished metal almost. And then same thing for that hope piece, I'm going in with that sienna red color and then just kind of dabbing it on. Alcohol inks dry very, very fast. So this doesn't take very long at all to get these colored. And then it's stuck on there. Once it's dry, I don't have to worry about it coming off on my fingers or coming off on anything. It is stuck to those metal pieces. So to clean things, I just put a little bit of alcohol directly on my glass mat, clean off my paintbrush, wipe off my mat. Just think you're using alcohol in place of water to clean. Okay, so now we can start assembling. So I've pulled out my planner punch board. You can just use regular hole punches, whatever works for you. But I have these spaced at the number 8 and number 34 slot. And that way I know I can just, all my holes are going to be exactly where they need to be. If I want to add pieces into this binder, I can do that, or this mini album, I can do that and know exactly where to punch the holes. So but again, use what you have. Don't feel like you need to go out and buy every single product I use in this video. Improvise with what you have in your stash. So I'm going to assemble this ahead of time. That way I can make sure that I'm not embellishing in areas that are going to interfere with where the holes are. So now that's all put together. I love those wood panels. Those turned out so amazing. I'm so excited about that technique. And then now we can start adding our embellishments. So like I said, I pulled out some pieces from the Open.Journey Bible journaling or devotional kits. So I had some flowers left. I have those little bird pieces up there. I ended up not using them. These are pretty small cards. I think they're like 4x5 or 5x7. They're pretty small. So I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot of embellishment. So I'm just trying to test things out and figure out what's going to work on there. Again, pulling out some of those floral pieces. I can't remember exactly which devotional kit these florals came from. If I can figure it out and it's still available, I will link it down below. But she does also have printables in her shop as well. And so you could print those out on cardstock and then use those. So for the title of this album, I'm just cutting apart the packaging that came with the cards. So it's got the Armor of God word focus cards. So I just trimmed that out and then kind of tore the edges here. And that way I could adhere it to the front and know what's inside this little mini album. I'm still intent on trying to add some more pieces to there, but I finally figured out what I'm going to use, and now we can start gluing things down. So I don't know about you, there's something about fall that just means all of the wood texture, thread, and leaves for me, and fall colors. It's like instantly when the temperature drops below 100 where I'm at, out comes the wood grain and the thread and the leaves, and they go on everything. So I'm just taking some gold thread and kind of rubbing it in my hands to create a messy little nest that I'm going to sandwich between those leaves and the flowers that I'm adding. On the first project that you saw at the beginning of the video, the first one that I did, I used a wax seal as my embellishment. And so again, use what you have, get creative. We're just, making an embellishment cluster. So if you don't have these die cuts, pull something out. Maybe you have some buttons or some metal pieces or something like that. Again, just use this as inspiration for your own project. So to adhere this, I'm using liquid glue because I am working on that base card that's got the texture, the wood texture. It's very, 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 very textured because it's a 3D embossing folder. So I have found that liquid adhesive works best. You could even use hot glue to stick things down, and that you just want to make sure that everything is going to be adhered well to that textured cardstock. So once I get all that glued down, I had these little die cut pieces from Tim Holtz. This is the smaller set of them. He does them in like a big size and a small size. I think these are called trimmings or something like that, tidbits. I don't know. I'll link it down below. But I just thought it might be fun to add a few of these to go with that kind of distressed vintage feel that we have going on and kind of layer up around my title piece. It also had these really adorable little butterflies. I'd used the butterflies on the other project as well, some bigger ones. And so I thought it'd be fun to add those smaller ones in there just to kind of, I don't know, break up my cluster a little bit, have some things kind of coming away from the cluster. There was a lot going on in that leaf and floral cluster. So I wanted some pieces in some other areas of the card. I'm pulling in my tiny attacher. Again, just lots and lots of texture. This is one of those projects where you just get to play. I don't know about you, but when I'm in my Bible, I'm a little more careful. I feel like I don't want to mess up. I don't want to explore. I don't want to experiment because it's in my Bible. But doing something like this, if I totally mess this up, I could throw it away and start all over again. No big deal. So this is a really fun opportunity to just get out of a creative rut and to play with some different products that maybe you haven't played in a while, or maybe get comfortable with some new products that you might have seen somebody else using and purchased and haven't been able to use yet because you don't feel comfortable using it in your Bible. Doing a project like this outside of your Bible is perfect for just getting creative and exploring and playing. So I'm going to pop up the title piece on some little foam dots. Not necessary, but we're already chunky and have lots of texture, so why not just add a little bit more texture onto there? Go ahead and stick that down. Love, love, love that. And then last but not least will be to attach our little hope piece there. So I'm going to cut myself some more of that gold thread. I am going to double it up. You could use embroidery floss as well. If I had some little jump rings or something like that, some like jewelry findings and things, that might have been a better option to attach this, but I didn't have anything like that. So I'm just using what I have, which is some more thread. So I'm going to create a little loop there so I can loop that on. Not needed, but just another fun embellishment to the front of this album. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see all of the fun texture. I love that this looks like you created it on a piece of old barnwood. Very, very fun. Lots of fall texture. I hope that it inspires you to get messy, pull out some products maybe that you haven't played with in a while, or maybe to pick up some new products. I did see that scrapbook.com is having a sale on mixed media products right now, which totally worked out. So I will have links down there for you. This would be a great time to pick up some new things to play with. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below for me. Check out that description box for links to everything that I used today. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. Be sure to click on that bell notification button so you don't miss any future videos from me. And until next time, thank you so much.